Okay, let's continue on with the media. What are the odds that out of the 5 shots that they broadcast of the impacts, there is not one reporter with any of those camera crews? And did the networks just decide to share cameras that day and send them out without reporters? Have you ever seen a news camera crew without a reporter? Neither have I. And what are the odds that all the network downloads from the archives would be exactly 172 megabytes? And we spoke about the significance of that in the media sections. And what are the odds that the clearest footage submitted as authentic and genuine would not even show an airliner? What are the odds that the Empire State Building took a 3-block stroll through Lower Manhattan on the morning of the attacks? What are the odds that the Verrazano Bridge caissons would detach themselves from the hundreds of thousands of tons of concrete that secure them to the bedrock beneath the Hudson River and took a ferry boat ride down the Hudson? What are the odds that Jennifer Oberstein...
I'm sorry?
Do you have any idea what hit the World Trade Center?
What it was?
Yeah, what kind of plane? We're getting reports that an airplane hit the building.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Honestly, I was walking up and it looked up and saw a big boom and fire. You know, I got to tell you, we were all saying around here that it was very interesting that it would be a bomb and it would be so high up.
And why are there no credits to those camera crews, producers, editors, directors of the broadcast from 9/11? I submit that's because none of the above would step forward and take credit for those videos. A simple way to settle this issue regarding the video flaws is to serve subpoenas to the mainstream media for the camera crews, directors, editors, and producers of the broadcasts on 9/11. Now, another issue to think about is, wouldn't a cabinet maker know the difference between maple, oak, mahogany, and poplar right at a glance? Would a loan processor be able to tell if someone had the resources to secure a loan at a glance of their application? And can a mechanic often tell what's wrong with a car just by listening to it? So shouldn't an anchor person who had spent their whole career in news know what they were looking at in the studio was flawed? Why weren't the anchors asking the news camera crews where their reporters were? Nothing definitive there, but the anchors should also be scrutinized as well. And now, what are the odds that the 2 federal judges overseeing the victims' claims would belong to the same synagogue? Alvin Hellerstein and Michael Mukasey. And what are the odds that Michael Mukasey would also be the federal judge that oversaw the Zacharias Moussaoui trial? And that they would appoint a Jewish lawyer, Sheila Birnbaum, as a special mediator. Since dozens and dozens of Israelis were arrested for 9/11, it is a pure and clear and absolutely outrageous conflict of interest that Israeli Jewish judges and attorneys were appointed to handle the claims. And then there's Kenneth Feinberg, the Jewish administrator of the 9/11 Hush Fund, where they pay off the victims and hope that they won't follow through with lawsuits. And what are the odds that co-author of the Project for a New American Century's position paper, Rebuilding America's Defenses, where they called for a new Pearl Harbor, would be the comptroller for the Pentagon at a time when over $3 trillion came up missing? And what are the odds that that Pentagon comptroller and author, Dov Zakheim, is also a Talmudic rabbi? And what are the odds that Lee Hamilton of the Keene-Hamilton 9/11 Commission is also a Bilderberg member? Here's a good one. What are the odds of a passport surviving this? What are the odds that Ahmed Mahmoud, the Pakistani intelligence chief that wired the $100,000 to lead hijacker Mohammed Atta, would be meeting with the heads of the Senate Intelligence Committee on the morning of 9/11, Porter Goss and Bob Graham? And what are the odds that Ahmed Mahmoud would also meet with the head of the CIA that week, George Tenet? And what are the odds of the entire FBI abandoning their official capacity, sworn duties, and ethical obligations, since they possess the forensic and investigative capabilities to establish the realities of 9/11? And what are the odds of a Boeing 757 and 767 flying over 500 knots below 10,000 feet? Well, at the 2009 Edwards Air Force Base open house, I interviewed dozens of pilots and flight engineers from the C-17, KC-135, the B-1B, B-52, and F-22 flight programs, the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School, U.S. Air Force Flight Test Center, and also the NASA Ames Dryden Flight Research Center. A U.S. Air Force major and KC-135 pilot told me that he had exceeded VMO by only a few knots at an air show and almost lost his aircraft. He swore he would never do it again. And to that major, who wished to remain anonymous, I send a salute your way and my warmest regards. Amongst all those interviews, I could not find one dissenting opinion. In fact, they all found it laughable. 500 knots is 140 knots above the engine, aerodynamic, and structural design limitations of those two Boeing models. 4 things will happen if you exceed those limits by that much. First, the engines will quit because the air is being overcompressed into the intake. The air deflected over the leading edge of the horizontal and vertical stabilizer gets deflected so far that the rudder and elevator flight control surfaces no longer have any effect. To achieve those bank angles, the air traveling over the wing would no longer produce lift, and thus a stall would occur and the plane would literally fall from the sky. And finally, catastrophic failure will occur as the wings will be torn from the fuselage because the wing loads are unsustainable. So let's consider Hani Hanjour, his flying circus, and his incredible aerobatic bunker-busting 757. Hani's flying skills were so poor he could not rent a single-engine Cessna. The instructor conducting the check ride for that rental stated, quote, he could not fly at all, unquote. Yet Hani is alleged to have executed a 240-degree, 7,000-foot descending turn, exceeding 5 or 6 Gs, before a last-minute level-off to strike the light poles and the Pentagon. A 757 cannot fly straight and level at 500 knots below 10,000 feet. Period. Aircraft, just like high-rise buildings, are subject to the known laws of physics. After removing his pilot's goggles, Hani now dons his magician's cape and somehow is able to make over 100 tons of wreckage, the remains of the passengers, and other contents of the aircraft disappear. Truly a multi-talented individual. Here is an open challenge to any executive, engineer, and even more specifically, Sean McCormick, who is the Vice President of Communications for Boeing Aircraft, to come forward and explain how Hani Hanjour was able to achieve this incredible feat of airmanship. In fact, I have a better suggestion. How about we place anyone who advocates official accounts on board a Boeing 757, piloted by a Boeing pilot, and have them fly to 500 knots below 10,000 feet. Any takers? It's time for the shills and debunkers to put their money where their mouth is. This is an open challenge to anyone from the 9/11 Commission, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, anyone from the Bush administration, Congress, the media, McKasey, Chertoff, Hellerstein. I challenge all of you to an open debate on C-SPAN, mediated by a neutral party so there is no cutting people off and in the middle of their point. I think C-SPAN would be a great venue for that debate. After all, it should be easy to debate a lowly ironworker if the bullshit you're peddling to America and the world had any possibility of being connected to the truth.